Allergy season, so if you hear the sniffles, please forgive me. They got a hold of me. And before I go on, I'm going to be preaching on the gospel, but I want to say James is really good. And I think I was talking to somebody, I was talking to you, Peter, about it, about how one of the church fathers called it the epistle of straw. It is not. It is wonderful. Go ahead and read it again because it is a spectacular piece of literature. But I want to preach on the gospel, and specifically I want to preach on what Jesus says to the Syrophoenician woman. And to do that, I'm going to begin with a story from the Old Testament. One day, late in the afternoon, God took Abraham up to a mountain and said to Abraham, "All right, listen. Down below us are the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. Now you and I both know that these are pretty awful places, wretched hives of scum and villainy, the worst of the worst. So listen, Abraham, I've made a covenant with you, which means that in part I'm not going to do anything that I'm not going to tell you about first. I'm not going to hide anything from you. And what I'm not going to hide from you is this. Tonight I'm going to smite like I've never smitten before. I'm going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah in one fell swoop. Boom, gone. End of story. Now, what do you say about that?" But Abraham said, "Hey, okay, wait a second. There are some good people down there. What if there's like 50 people down there and you end up destroying them too?" And God folded his arms and nodded and said, "Okay, sure. If there are 50 good people, then yes, I will spare that city." "Okay," said Abraham, seeing that he was getting somewhere. "How about 40 good people?" "Sure, if I find 40 good people, I'll spare both of those cities." 30? God nodded. "If I find 30, I'll spare them." Abraham had been feeling pretty good up until this moment, seeing as he was persuading God to not destroy 2 whole cities. But he now started to get a little bit anxious. What if he was pushing God too hard? What if God got angry at him for criticizing his decision? But he had enough hope, so he went on for a little bit further. "How about 20, God? 20 good people?" God nodded again. "Sure, 20 good people." Abraham wondered, do I dare go any further? He wanted to save the people of Sodom and Gomorrah, and maybe not everyone, but at least a few good folks, so he pushed a little more. "How about 10? God nodded. 10. But Abraham dared go no further, so he stuck with 10. Unfortunately, 10 good people could not be found in the entire cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, and so those cities were destroyed. Now I have a question for you. What would happen if Abraham kept asking for lower amounts of people? What if he had said 5? What if he had said just one good person? If one good person could be found in all the houses and in all the streets of those 2 cities, would God have held back his hand? What would God have done? Would God have said, "Bah, you hopeless romantic, you soft-hearted fool. No, now for your impertinence I will destroy them both and maybe your people too, ha ha ha." We don't really know why Abraham stopped at 10, though we do know what probably would have happened if he had gone all the way to 1. And what would have happened is the good news. In our gospel reading today, the Syrophoenician woman asks Jesus for help, and Jesus does what God did way back in the book of Genesis. Jews and Syrophoenician folks didn't care for one another, and Jesus waves the woman off as a member of a cultural group that, according to his own culture, are not very godly people. And the woman says, basically, "Okay, Jesus, but what if you find one righteous person among all the Syrophoenician people? Just one. Will you keep condemning us?" And Jesus turns around and says, "Bingo, you got it. I would stop condemning you. And you, my lady, are that one person who is enough to not only save your daughter, to not only save your people, but to change the hearts of everyone. For the gospel, capital G, good news, is not just for my Jewish siblings alone, but for everyone. To borrow a phrase from John's gospel, I did not come into this world in order to destroy the world, to condemn it, to annihilate whole cities in an instant. I came into this world to save it. And that world includes you, Syrophoenicians, the Romans, the Chinese, the people of Tierra del Fuego in the southern parts of South America. That good news is for everyone. My beloved people of Christ Church, there is good news to proclaim. And what is that good news? It's that everyone has a seat at God's table. That no matter who you are, or where you come from, or how many times you sin, or how many times you think that you've done awful, horrible things, you are still a beloved child of God. And this news should be shouted from all the rooftops. Think about it. We're living in a country and a political climate where half of us think the other half are Sodom and Gomorrah, and vice versa. And the good news is that we need to proclaim is that not only does one good Republican or one good Democrat mean that the whole party should be listened to and understood and considered, but that goodness is not measured by your political opinion. Everyone has a right to be treated with respect and given an open heart and an open ear, because they're human first, and God's beautiful creatures even before that. And there's even more good news. You may have a dark past. You may have a grief-filled past. Or maybe you're just human and you sin like any other human. Whatever the case, God is waiting for you like the father of the prodigal son, a father who spends his days on the highest hill waiting to see his child come home, forgetting all else but the hope that one day he'll see a tiny little flash of movement on the horizon. That is you making your way back in grief, thinking that you're not enough to make up 10 people in Sodom and Gomorrah. But when your father sees you, he rushes out and throws his arms around you and starts a party and sings and dances like a madman, because it's not really about the number of good people. That's never been the point. It's that we've come back and we've heard the call and said, I want to live again. And God says, magnificent, me too. Here's a margarita and a noisemaker. Let's party until the sun comes up because hooray, you're home. I don't really like margaritas, but I assumed everyone else does, so I threw that in there. It's the salt, I don't know. And there's more good news. Because there's you, Christ Church, you who are the good news in Manlius, New York, who are the good news at the Samaritan Center and the food bank, and in the schools and in the supermarkets, serving on committees, going to meetings, here at church and out in the community. You are the good news of Jesus Christ. You are beautiful believers in the truth of the good news, whether you have a ton of faith or whether you have some vague hope that one day you'll find some faith. You are beautiful and beloved and magnificent and holy. Manlius and the surrounding areas are better places because you exist. So we're coming back for the fall festival. I know it's not fall yet, but this morning was kind of cold, right? So it's mostly fall. We're here for the fall festival. We're coming back from all the different places that we went to during the summer. And we've got the fall festival today. We're beginning what's called the program year, where we start up again all the Bible studies and all the great things that we're doing. And the theme for this year is there's good news to proclaim. We on the vestry put our heads together, thought and prayed really hard, and one wonderful vestry member just blurted out, you know what, there's just so much good news to proclaim. And we said, yes, that's it. That's what we need to be saying to you all this whole year. That's what we need to tell y'all. There is so much good news in our lives. Stories of reconciliation and hope. Stories of peace and comfort and of battling evil with love. We ourselves are good news, and Christ Church is good news. So climb up to the rooftops and shout out that good news for everyone to hear. Tell your stories and get ready to hear more and more at Christ Church about the good that's going on here. Don't be shy, Because good news is like sunlight. It shines forth, and all the plants and animals in the world drink it in and thrive upon it. There is good news here to proclaim at Christ Church. There is good, wonderful, beautiful, gospel-planted news.